Spooky, huh? Happy Halloween from Lon Milo DuQuette. This picture was photographed by a marvelous artist, Jody Breedlove, many, many years ago, obviously before this was published first. Uh, uh, I'm going to read a little something from this today and something Crowley wrote too. Uh, but anyway, just that look on my face, I that was a sincere method acting moment of truth. Okay, Jody took me out to photograph things for the possible use of a book cover. Took me out to Temecula, California. And the reason he took me out there is because in those days, so this is probably the late 1980s. Um, well, this was first published in 1999. Okay, so uh, anyway, the smog from Los Angeles with all the petrochemicals and strange chemicals in the air. The smog from Los Angeles drifted into the area uh, there, sort of past those hills, um, Trabuco Canyon area, and down into that low area like Lake Elsinore. But the smog from LA, okay, which comes in every day and sits there. And then the next day, smog comes in and sits there. Or this was the case at the time. And the sun, when it sets, is shining through that chemical haze. And instead of looking like clouds or something, it just sets everything on fire with color. Okay. And so he took me out to a vacant lot that was by a 7-Eleven store, as I recall. Uh, as the sun was setting, and we sat in the car and waited till the sun was just doing the right thing. But we waited so long in the car while waiting for the timing of the sundown that I had to pee really bad. Okay. I really had to pee. And, but anyway, I'd hold it. I was determined to hold it. And so he set me up when he had a backdrop that he thought he could work with and everything else. And my face was in the sun, and he told me how to hold my head and everything else. And he started taking just tons and tons and tons of pictures from different angles and different settings and things. And I was getting impatient. And actually, I'm thinking in this picture, I've got to pee so bad. I didn't want to, take the romance out of that picture, but uh, I wasn't thinking Enochian thoughts at that time. I was saying, when are you going to be through with this damn picture? Oh, and then he sort of feathered my beard a little bit more. It was pretty long, but he sort of feathered it later. But there's that story. It's Halloween. Happy Halloween, uh, everyone. I haven't really been uh, conscious of Halloween approaching this year as I have in other years. I've had just other things on my mind and stuff. But my dreams over the last, I would say, 10 days, my dreams were peopled with dead people. dead people I knew. And I wasn't dreaming about them, something that we did in the past or anything else. It was almost like a living presence. I was dreaming of them. Uh, and I have a strange sort of complex uh, agnostic view on reincarnation and things like that. But characters are alive uh, to us, even in everyday life. We give reality and life to the people around us as they uh, are affecting us. So in a sense, we create our friends and relatives, and we create them and have a certain responsibility for them. Plus the fact that time as we know it does not exist. Okay? The events that we experienced with our family and our friends, uh, in a sense, is still occurring. Is the past isn't what we think it is, but anyway, I'm going to read you two little things. When dead people appear to you in dreams, I wrote a song. Last night I dreamed of dead people. Uh, it was a true story. Last night I did have, or that night I did have a dream about my mom and dad coming to pick me up at a weird hotel, and there was a cab outside with its engine running, uh, and when I finally realized that my parents were both dead, uh, I said, "No, I'm not going to get into the cab with." No, thanks for the offer, but you're dead, Um, you get in the cab and go. Uh, but usually when somebody dies, there is a short period that passes, a week, 10 days, something like that. Maybe 40 days, maybe 30 days, maybe 29 days, um, where you have a visitation. And I'm going to tell you about uh, my father's ghost here. And I've read this to you before. Then afterwards, I'm going to read you something that Aleister Crowley said concerning death. First, from My Life of the Spirits, Chapter 11, My Father's Ghost. Most everyone would agree that objective reality is a world where living things are just that, living things, such as people or dogs or cats or elephants. Furthermore, symbols are not alive, but they're abstract representations of ideas. It's been my experience, however, that the opposite is true on the magical plane. Symbols are alive. And living things are generally symbols of something. When I see an angel or a magical beast in a dream or vision or a scrying session, it's usually a symbolic encounter with a concept concerning a personal or magical issue that is too complex to be expressed or understood through any other medium. That's why masonry is just full of these awesome symbols and stuff. And masonry attempts to make partial explanations of what they are, but they always say, there's more meaning to this than we can tell you. And it's not because they're keeping a secret. Is that symbols are alive. And they can mean different things at different times under different circumstances. But I digress. These same living apparitions react to symbols So, in other words, uh, an angel or a spirit in a vision that looks like a character, they respond to symbols as if the symbols were alive to them. Like, oh God, don't draw a pentagram. Oh, don't set that pentagram loose in my world, you know. These same living apparitions react to symbols as if they were alive. A simple geometric figure, such as a cross or a pentagram drawn in the air in the face of a pesky spirit, is often enough to send it fleeing in terror. This basic rule of thumb unravels when one is faced in a dream or a vision with the living image of a dead person. Is it alive or is it a symbol? Almost everyone who's ever lost a loved one has at least one visitation story to tell. Usually, the deceased appears in a vivid dream or vision a week or two after dying and delivers a message to the effect that everything's okay and not to worry. I used to think that this phenomenon was a natural denial mechanism of the mind, triggered at times when it's easier to accept a hallucination rather than dealing with grief and the greater mystery of death. Now I'm not so sure. When I was 24, my father died of emphysema a few weeks after seeing our son Jean-Paul take his first steps. He was only 61. About 10 days after his funeral, he showed up to deliver a curious message. Since my initiation into Amorc, okay, at that time I was studying the Rosicrucian Order Amorc monographs and was active in the Amorc local lodge in Long Beach. Okay. Since my initiation into Amorc, I had set aside an hour or two each Thursday night to study the monographs and practice the various outlined psychic experience exercises. For some reason, I decided this night I would perform my devotions before dinner and set up my sanctum altar in the bedroom. I opened the, quote, temple with the usual ceremonial formalities, unsealed my new monograph, and started to read. Almost immediately, I found that I could not keep my mind focused on the words. I found myself reading the same sentence over and over and over again until I became extremely sleepy. I finally gave up trying to read altogether and decided to take a little nap before dinner and pick up my studies later. I blew out both candles and stretched out in the cool darkness. In those days, it was my habit, when sleeping on my back, to cross my arms over my breast. I closed my eyes and was instantly out. Suddenly, I became conscious that the room was no longer dark. I remember thinking I have broken the very first safety rule of fledgling mystics and allowed myself to fall asleep with candles burning. Don't want to do that. I opened my eyes and looked up at the ceiling. I could see every detail bathed in a warm orange light. I noticed that my arms were no longer crossed over my chest, but stretched out crucifixion style. That struck me as being very curious because I knew I hadn't been asleep for very long, and not long enough to change positions. The pit of my stomach tingled with a joyous thrill that I always feel when I dream that I'm flying. But I wasn't flying. I was flat on my back on the bed. I turned my head to the left and looked down my arm to see my hand dangling over the mattress. Then I turned to the right, and to my utter delight discovered my father, sitting by the bed, not 6 inches away from my right hand. He looked great. Better, in fact, than I'd seen him in years. I felt younger just looking at him. His skin was a beautiful tan, and his hair was thicker and darker than I'd ever remembered. He didn't say a word. And for some reason, I wasn't inclined to speak either. We just looked at each other. I soon became conscious of the peculiarity of the moment. The light in the room did not come from the candles or the electric lights, but seemed to radiate from every object in the room, especially from Dad and me. Also, there was a tangible silence in the room, as if the whole world was holding its breath. I had the feeling that if anything were to move, it would do so in blissfully slow motion. Finally, it dawned on me I was sleeping, Dad was dead, and all this was very weird indeed. I had the presence of mind to realize that the thrill in the pit of my stomach was symptomatic of astral projection, and that this whole experience might not be a dream at all, but a bona fide case of psychic contact with the dead. To test my theory, I willed myself to float slowly to the ceiling and back down again. I did it with ease. I looked over at Dad and smiled. He seemed amused. "Oh, you're testing this vision, are you?" He seemed amused but a little impatient. Then, with great deliberation, he lifted his right hand. He wore a beautiful golden ring with a blue stone setting. The stone, let's see here, was embellished with the Masonic square and compass. However, upon closer examination, I saw that superimposed upon the square was a downward pointing triangle surmounted by an ankh, very similar to an Amorc device. That's sort of the symbol of Amorc. So it was a Masonic square and compasses ring with an Amorc symbol in the center. I said, "Is this your message?" I asked mentally, and he smiled and just pointed again to the ring. I had no idea what this meant. He delivered the wordless message with such drama and grace that for the time being, I didn't care what it meant. It was just a beautiful, pleasant moment. I choked up a little bit like I do when I almost cry at the movies. I closed my eyes just for a second to control the tears. I took a deep breath, then opened my eyes. The room was dark. My arms were folded over my chest, and my father was gone. A week or so later, Constance and I visited my Aunt Vina, that's my father's sister, in Long Beach. I mentioned to her that I was studying the Amorc monographs, and she said, "Oh, in that case, I've got something for you." She went to her bookcase and plucked several very old Amorc books and some bound monographs from the 1930s. And they were bound in really cool folders, cloth-covered folders with gold Amorc stamps with a winged solar disc, and it looked very impressive and occult. Okay. She said, "I took the lessons for about 5 years," she said, as she handed me the books. "You're welcome to these old monographs. Your father tried to join when he was 17 or 18. But in those days, you had to be 21 years old to join the Rosicrucians. He was heartbroken. He was so thrilled when the Masons accepted him about the time you were born." This little tidbit of family history did not exactly explain my father's visitation. But at the time it served to encourage me concerning the direction of my spiritual life and the way it was heading. However, in the years to follow, when the mysteries of Rosicrucianism and esoteric Freemasonry would become the centerpiece of my magical life, I would come to understand that the message of my father's ghost was uncannily prophetic. And once again, that's from My Life with the Spirits. That was, wow, it'll be 25, yes, 25 years old. Anyway, there's that. Let me take a sip of my Temple coffee here because I got a frog in my throat. Therian, okay. Aleister Crowley, back in 1918, wrote something called Concerning Death. And it was an epistle of Baphomet to the illustrious Damozel Anna Wright, companion of the Holy Grail, shining like the moon. That's probably her magical motto. Concerning death, that she and her sisters may bring comfort to all them that are nigh death, and unto such as love them. Beloved daughter and sister, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. It is written in the book of the law, every man and every woman is a star. It is Our Lady of the Stars that speaketh to thee. O thou that art a star, a member of the body of Nuit, listen, for thine ears are become dulled to the mean noises of the earth. The infinite silence of the stars woos thee with subtle music. Behold her bending down above thee, a flame of blue, all touching, all penetrant, her lovely hands upon the black earth, and her lithe body arched for love, and her soft feet not hurting the little flowers. And think that all this grossness shall presently fall from thee as thou leapest to her embrace, caught up into her love as a dewdrop into the kisses of sunrise. Is not the ecstasy of Nuit the consciousness of the continuity of existence, the omnipresence of her body? All that hath hurt thee was that thou knewest it not. As that fadeth from thee, thou shalt know as never yet how all is one. Again she saith, I give unimaginable joys on earth, certainty, not faith while in life, upon death, peace unutterable. This thou hast known. Time that eateth his children hath not power on them that would be not children of time. To them that knoweth themselves immortal, that dwell always in eternity, the consciousness of Nuit throned upon the chariot of the sun, there is no death that men call death. In all the universe, darkness is only found in the shadow of a gross and opaque planet. As it were for a moment, the universe itself is a flood of light eternal. So also death is but through accident Thou hast hidden thyself in the shadow of thy gross body and taken it for reality. Excuse me. Thou hast trembled, but the orb revolveth anon. Excuse me. But the orb revolveth anon. The shadow passeth away from thee. There is the disillusion and eternal ecstasy in the kisses of new. For inasmuch as thou hast made the law of freedom thine, as thou lived in light and liberty and love, thou hast become a free man of the city of stars. Listen again to thine own voice within thee. Is not Hadit the flame that burns in every heart of man, in the core of every star? Is not he life and the giver of life? And is not, therefore, the knowledge of him the knowledge of death? For it has been shown unto thee in many other places how death and love be twins. Now art thou the hunter, and death rideth beside thee with his horse and spear as thou chasest thy will through the forests of eternity, whose trees are the hair of Nuit, my mistress. Thrill with the joy of life and death. Know, hunter, mighty and swift, the quarry turns to bay. Thou hast but to make one sharp thrust, and thou hast won. The Virgin of Eternity lies supine at thy mercy, and thou art Pan. Thy death shall be the seal of the promise of our age-long love. Thou hast thou not striven to the inmost of thee? Death is the crown of all. Harden. Hold up thyself. Lift thine head. Breathe not so deep. Die. Or art thou still entangled in the thorny plaits of wild briar rose that thou hast woven in thy magic dance on earth? Are not thine eyes strong enough to bear the starlight? Must thou linger yet a while in the valley? Must thou dally with the shadows in the dusk? Then, if it be thy will, thou hast no right but to do thy will. Love still these phantoms of the earth. Thou hast made thyself a king. If it please thee to play with the toys of matter, were they not made to serve thy pleasure? Then follow in thy mind the wondrous word of the stele of revealing itself. Return, if thou wilt, from the abode of the stars. Dwell with mortality and feast thereon, for thou art this day made Lord of heaven and earth. The dead man, Ankh-Afna-Khonsu, saith with his voice of truth and calm, O thou that hast a single arm, O thou that glitterest in the moon, I weave thee in the spinning charm, I lure thee with a billowy tune. The dead man, Ankh-Afna-Khonsu, hath joined the dwellers of the light, opening Duant, the star abodes, their keys receiving. The dead man, Ankh-Afna-Khonsu, hath joined the dwellers of the light, his pleasure on earth to do among the living. Love is the law, love under will. The benediction of the all-begetter, all-devourer, be upon thee. And those last lines are from the Egyptian Book of the Dead. And Constance has creeped into the room.
Are you finished?
I'm still on.
I know that.
Yes, I'm finished.
Well, did you give him like a childish Halloween at the beginning? I don't know. Blessing?
Yes.
Oh, good. Well, I just thought I'd give him another one.
Okay.
I was gonna.
Halloween blessings from St. Constance.
Well, when we were children, which was Halloween, we were trick or treating. That had to have been the 50s.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Not the 1850s, the 1950s.
Well, in our town, it was the 1850s.
Probably.
Yeah.
It would always be cold and beginning to snow, and we'd probably have one loose tooth. It was about that, right?
Come out in a caramel apple. Yeah.
Yeah, or something. A popcorn ball.
Mm-hmm.
What were those black suckers called? The
Holloway bars.
No, the black one. The caramel with chocolate on the outside. Those are bars. Anyway, we would put on our warmest coats, and our warmest hats, our warmest mittens, get our biggest pillowcase. Yes, we were greedy little fiends.
None of these paper bags with
we'd get our
pumpkins.
plastic things with pumpkins on them. We'd get an old pillowcase for him, the biggest one we'd request. They're all the same size in those days anyway. And put on our sweatiest rubber masks so you could be cold, you could be sweating in them and still have ice cold things dripping on your eyebrows from the sweat because it was so cold outside. Okay. And they were
My beard froze.
Oh, your beard froze. It's funny. Anyway, and they didn't actually matter what the masks were. I don't think. A few kids had costumes, but that was so rare. Nobody I knew had a real costume, hardly ever. Some kids would go out with a ghost thing or a sheet over them.
Yeah,
and that was the
pirate hat on sideways.
Yes, well, yeah. Well, that'd be it. Anyway, we go out into the night, I would go out especially, dragging my little brother. He was quite willing, though, but 5 years younger than me. And we would go out, and believe it or not, our parents would let us. I mean, this town was small, but not that small. Roam as far as we could walk and come home whenever we couldn't take it anymore. Which, believe me, when they were
I used to come back and unload my pillowcase and go back out again.
But we would get so far away we couldn't do that because I was, walk till you drop kind of person even then. So we go out and we'd be frozen and the world was our oyster. And there were other kids trick-or-treating too, but by the time we were through, there were even less of them. And kids did not trick-or-treat with their parents.
No.
They were out alone.
Oh, good.
They were out alone, and nobody worried. The kids didn't worry, the parents didn't worry, no. Anyway, and the world was our oyster. And every house, every stop we made was a new discovery and a chance for treats.
And we got to see old people taking delight in coming to the door, waving at us from their wheelchairs.
Right, and maybe even giving us a small cup of hot cocoa in a paper cup, or a really gross popcorn ball that they took a lot of time to make. But anyway, the world was our oyster, and every stop was full of treats. And you know what? If we just change our perspective and see things the way they really are, even as adults, there's a really good chance that the world can still be our oyster, and every stop we make is full of treats for us. So happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Go out in the outside for 1 second and take a breath of crisp, cold air at night when it's dark, and celebrate.
Okay. Oh, I thought you were bringing that bee spit in for me.
Not bee spit.
Okay. We have this little ginseng kind of thing. Huh? Okay.
Are you going to say it?
Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law.
Love is the law, love under will.
Happy Halloween.